Stanley Tookie Williams III was born on December 29, 1953, in Shreveport, Louisiana. He was born into circumstances of hardship. His father abandoned the family, leaving his teenage mother to raise him. In 1959, his mother moved with Stanley to Los Angeles, hoping for a better life. The new neighborhood in south-central Los Angeles appeared outwardly promising, but Williams would later describe it as a shiny red apple rotting at the core. From a young age, Stanley felt the absence of opportunity and structure. He began walking the streets, drawn more to the harsh realities of neighborhood life than to classrooms. He later said that he was destined to become either prey or predator, and he chose the latter. School held little appeal. Williams rarely attended, believing that traditional education did not serve him. Instead, he earned a reputation for toughness, street fighting, and bravado. During his early teens, he witnessed and participated in violence, dogfights, street fights, and juvenile theft. The gang culture of the neighborhood began to define his identity. At around age 16 or 17, Stanley connected with Raymond Washington, a fellow youth on the west side of south-central Los Angeles. In 1971, the two of them co-founded what would become the notorious street gang known as the Crips. Their original intention, according to Williams, was to protect their neighborhood against other gangs. But as the organization grew, it morphed into something much darker. Over the 1970s, the Crips expanded beyond their original block, their membership and influence multiplying. The West Side and East Side factions emerged. Conflicts erupted, and the gang's reputation for violence, theft, drive-by shootings, and turf war increased. Williams himself admitted later to being drawn to the power, recognition, and belonging the gang provided. A void in his own life. The gang life actually filled that void, he said. The crimes and conviction. By the late 1970s, Williams's life on the streets had spiraled into serious crime. According to court documents, on February 27, 1979, Williams and 3 associates, under the influence of PCP, armed with a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 caliber handgun, set out on a robbery spree. Their target? A late-night convenience store clerk, Albert Owens, working the overnight shift at 7-Eleven in Whittier, California. Owens was shot twice in the back and killed. Less than 2 weeks later, Williams allegedly forced his way into the Brookhaven Motel, where he and his accomplices killed a Taiwanese immigrant couple, Yen I Yang and wife Tsai Shai Yang, and their daughter, Yuchin Yang Lin. The total take from the 2 robberies was minimal, $220. Yet the penalties would prove enormous. On April 20, 1981, following a trial in Torrance, California, Williams was convicted on 4 counts of murder plus 2 counts of robbery, and was sentenced to death. From that point forward, he was sent to the death row facility at San Quentin State Prison in California. The trial and conviction were not without controversy. Some critics pointed to the composition of the jury: 10 white jurors, 1 Filipino, 1 Latino, no African-American jurors, raising questions of race and fairness in the criminal justice system. Life on death row and the turning point. Initially, Williams's behavior in prison betrayed no sign of remorse or change. In his early years behind bars, he remained foreboding and combative. He spent vast stretches in solitary confinement, from 1988 to 1994, over 6 years, for assaults on guards and other inmates. It was during this forced isolation, however, that Williams says his transformation began. In solitary, he turned to reading the Bible, the dictionary, philosophy, Black history. He faced the quiet, unbroken walls and began to reflect on his life, the gang he helped create, and the violence he had a hand in. He described it as the start of a transitional path toward redemption. By 1992, Williams claimed he had become a changed man. He had realized the destructive legacy of the Crips and his own role in it, and he committed himself to speak out against gang violence. His activism from prison began modestly at first: letters, speeches via telephone, outreach to juvenile correction facilities. Released from solitary in 1994, Williams embraced his new identity, not as a gang leader, but as a reformer and advocate. He renounced his association with the Crips and issued an apology, something he had never done earlier. On his website and in writings, he apologized to the children and young people who had been drawn into the gang lifestyle. Anti-gang advocacy and creative work. From his cell on death row, Williams embarked on perhaps the most unusual chapter of his life. He began writing. For children, for teens, for anyone who could be hooked away from gang life. In 1996, with writer and advocate Barbara Becknell, he published his first series of books aimed at young readers, titled Tookie Speaks Out Against Gang Violence. The series addressed topics like gangs and self-esteem, gangs and drugs, gangs and violence. He also wrote Life in Prison, 1998, and his memoir, Blue Rage, Black Redemption, 2004. On his author page, Williams is noted as the only person in history to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize while imprisoned. Among his many contributions, he devised the Tookie Protocol for Peace, a step-by-step project aimed at brokering truces between rival gangs. He created the Internet Project for Street Peace, connecting youth globally. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize several times in recognition of his anti-violence work. Williams's story of redemption stirred public debate. Could a man sentenced to death for 4 murders truly become an agent of peace? Supporters pointed to the hundreds of letters from young people whose lives he claimed to have touched. Critics said he had not accepted full responsibility for the murders, and argued that his transformation came too late. In 2004, the major motion picture, or rather TV movie, Redemption, the Stan Tookie Williams story, starring Jamie Foxx, portrayed his life and transformation, bringing his story into popular culture. The final chapter: Clemency Denied and Execution. Despite his activism, the legal system moved inexorably toward execution. In 2005, his final appeals failed, and his case became one of the most publicized death penalty debates in California's history. On December 13, 2005, Williams was executed by lethal injection at San Quentin State Prison. He was 51 years old, just 16 days short of his 52nd birthday. On that day, thousands of supporters, including celebrities and anti-death penalty activists, gathered for a vigil outside the prison. During his final hours, Williams said no last words to the warden. But earlier, in an interview, he spoke of his redemption, his changed life, and his hope for the young people he had reached. After his execution, his body was taken to a funeral service in Los Angeles on December 20, 2005, where mourners, including former gang members and celebrities, convened to remember him. His ashes were later scattered in Thokoza Park, Soweto, South Africa, fulfilling one of his wishes.